we're bringing you all you need to succeed in the real estate business. It's Spilling the LT, brought to you by Lawyers Title, telling you what it's really like to work in real estate.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Tamera Gaede. I am the Director of Collin County Sales for Lawyers Title. I'm really excited about our podcast today, but first, if you like my content, you're really going to love my escrow team. Give me an opportunity to earn your business. You can reach out to me on any of my social media platforms, and let's get a conversation started about a partnership together. Today's guests are a couple of our amazing escrow officers, and the market has shifted. We've all seen it happen, and now things are starting to slow down. Contracts and how people have written contracts and what they're doing contract to close has also changed. So I wanted to bring a couple of our experts in to share some of the things that they've noticed in the market contract to close since the market has shifted. Today I have with me Janet Suddreth. She is actually a senior VP in our company. She's the branch manager of the Lawyers Title Preston Plano office, and she is an escrow officer, along with Shannon Suddreth, who is an escrow officer in the Lawyers Title Preston Plano office. So I have started to partner with them, and I wanted to introduce them to everyone today because they are full of expertise and knowledge, and they're going to be able to share a lot of really good golden nuggets for the audience today. So thank you, ladies, so much for joining me on the show. I'm really appreciative that you're here, and we're going to have a really good conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to dive right into it. Let's get started with the meat, okay? Now, I wanted to back up just a little bit because we do have some younger, less seasoned agents that do watch the podcast. So I thought, and I've never done this when I've had other escrow officers on the show before, but I wanted to explain the contract to close process, right? So two agents, buyer agent, listing agent, decide to execute a contract on a property. They get everybody to sign. They send it into the title company. Shannon, will you share with us, just kind of briefly overview the contract to close process?
Absolutely. So you're going to execute that contract. You are going to send that contract over to us. We're going to review that contract. We're going to open title on that contract. We are going to send out our in here, which is a great portal for sending earnest and option money over to us very securely. We are then going to order HOA. If there is an HOA, we usually try to order those the same day that we get the contract because those usually have a specific timeline. We then look at everything that comes back on title. We ask for any additional information. You're also going to get critical dates, a welcome letter, and the critical dates are really important, and I find that agents really love those because it kind of gives everyone up front a timeline of what we're asking for and when we need it, such as surveys, earnest and option money, those specific things, when the HOA docs are due. So it gives everybody a really great upfront view of what we're asking for and why and when they're due. Once we get title in, you're going to get the title commitment sent out to everyone so everyone knows what is on that title commitment. If we need any other information, if something came back on title that we need clarification on or any other documentation, we're going to ask for that. And then after that, it's waiting on the lender to send us docs, and then you're at the closing table.
So let's back up a second because you talked about in here, and that's proprietary software to Fidelity National Financial. We're owned by Fidelity National Financial. So can you explain what is in here so that they understand a little bit more about that?
Sure. So in here is a secure portal that our company uses for a couple different reasons. On that contract, it is really important that we have buyer and sellers' cell phone numbers and emails because that is how that information gets sent to them securely, is through those forms of communication. So if those are not on the contract, we will reach out and ask for that. But once we send that out, it allows you to send us earnest and option money securely. It also gives you the opportunity to fill out seller forms and buyer forms, which give us really important information that we need, such as ordering payoffs, if your loan info, all that kind of information is sent back to us securely through that portal.
So, and I've been a buyer several times, so I've used the in here software for delivering earnest and option. I love it. There are several different ways that people can still deliver earnest and
Oh,
option,
absolutely.
right? So you want
Yes.
to tell them what those are really
Sure,
quickly?
you can drop a cashier's check off at our office. You can wire us money, and you can drop a personal check off to us as well as using the Start in Here. So there's
So just so you know, a lot of people hear the word Zocam or other, ways that you can
Right.
deposit. It's just kind of like depositing a check electronically at your bank, right? You get on the app, you write your check, you take a picture of it, you upload it. Same thing. When you go in to log in, it's a secure link that the buyer is going to log into. It'll ask them a few questions: social security number, date of birth, verification of identity, right?
It's
To make
very,
sure,
very
yes, it's very
secure.
secure. But it's really easy to use and navigate through.
Oh, it's very user friendly.
And so you just take a picture of your check, just like you do, and you can combine earnest
Mm-hmm.
option into one check.
Yes.
You take a picture of it, and it immediately uploads to our title company.
And
so
we all really prefer it in one check.
yes, and one check is easier. Yes.
Yes.
And so, look, you can do a wire, but you're going to incur a wiring fee. And to me, I guess some people don't have checks as much as they used to anymore.
Right.
But
I have heard that lately, especially a lot of the younger buyers.
well, they don't even know what a check is.
They
so.
don't. My son
Yeah,
has no
or how to
idea what
write
it is.
one.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
don't know how to write one either.
Yeah.
So we got to start there. And so, but I find it the easiest way. Even though I work for Lawyers Title, I could just deliver a check to my office, but I like doing the in here.
It is really easy. You don't have to leave your house.
Yeah.
You don't have to go anywhere.
And I think in this day and age, having really secure options for things, to me, I have a Marine dad, so we're all about security at my house. So,
And that's why we don't send it to the agency.
yeah. Oh, and that's one thing that we were going to talk about. So it is important to note, we do not send wiring instructions to anyone but the buyer
or
and
the sellers,
seller.
or if there is a third party sending gift funds, we
Okay.
will send them to them, but we never ever send them to agents.
Tell us why.
So the reason why we don't send them to agents is really agents shouldn't be put in that position and be liable for that. So it's really easy once, those wiring instructions go out. Hackers are a real thing, and emails are hijacked every day. And, you just don't want that liability. So we never send them to agents. The buyers
Yep.
need to be responsible for sending their earnest and option money in. They are the ones that are buying the house, and that should just fall on the buyers and the sellers. They're really, the more people that are in the pot, the
And
more
that's
room
where I see problems happen, right? Too many chiefs and not enough Indians, right?
Yes. And more
Yes.
things are, liable to happen, and emails get hacked, and wiring instructions change, and then people end up wiring to bogus accounts. And
And
you
look, we've
absolutely
heard
do
about
not want that.
people
And it's
losing their earnest money.
yeah,
It's a
and it's
real
really,
thing.
really
and it's
hard to
very
get that
sad, and
back.
it's very scary. And most of the time, you're not going to get it back.
Right, you are not, and it is
So
very
let the title
hard.
company do their job, okay? And make sure that you're picking a title company like Lawyers Title that you can trust, so that when we do send things directly to your clients, you feel good about it, right? And you don't feel like that you need to get in the middle of the process because you're with a reputable title
Right.
company and you're with people that you can trust. So thank you for that explanation. I think sometimes, the contract to close process, it's just, we do classes on it and stuff, but we don't sit down and really explain. The contract comes in. Now you have X amount of time to get earnest and option. And we'll
Mhm.
talk about some of those timelines because I have a different question later for Janet. But, making sure that we understand timelines, making sure that we are adhering to the critical dates timeline. We've got the welcome letter going out so everybody knows who's supposed to contact who during the transaction. Those things are really important, and they're really important to agents. So the fact that we give that service to people is I know, very appreciated by our clients. So, so we had our big economic forecast event yesterday. Shannon, I saw you there, so thank you for coming. And I don't feel like I got a ton of surprises about what they're predicting to happen because, I get to spend time with very educated professionals all the time, people smarter than me. And so, and I make sure I'm not the smartest person in the room ever, because then I'm in the wrong room, right? And so we are seeing the shift in the market. And one of the things that we have seen change is what agents are putting in the blanks in the contract now. And before, they had to be so strategic and wield every blank to their best ability to win the offer, because we had so many multiple offers and all the things. But we've seen a shift now. So, Shannon, let's start with you, Janet. I wanted you to talk about, just as from your vantage point as an escrow officer, what are some of the changes that you've seen since the shift has happened in the contract or contract to close process? What are some of the notables? And we can stay at a high level here, but do you want to share with us some of the things that you've seen become different in the contract, or what agents are doing?
Recently,
Yes.
I'm seeing a lot more where the sellers are paying title policy again. It's becoming more negotiable. There's more houses on the market, so the pendulum has swung some. So I think that that's one of the things. You were seeing a lot of, there were no option periods.
You know, and I did not think that was a good idea.
I never have.
You need an option period. You need to do your due diligence on a house before you buy it. So,
Correct.
and these people, you know, the people that were putting in no option time frame at all, I thought that was a buyer beware.
And I
But
think-
so if they're coming back, that's good.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because they think, or they're thinking that if there's a homeowners association, they can still get out of that in the 3-day if they've checked the boxes correctly on the addendum. But you also have the financing addendums. You know, there's two parts to that, the ones that the agents put in, but you also have to have the appraisal and all of that. So there's still an out for the buyer to get out there. So I think a lot of that has changed in the respect that it's swinging more back toward, you know, the sellers. They're just not, I don't see $100,000 over list price. I'm not seeing $50,000 over list price. They're coming in at list price most of the time now. So that's a big change. I think it's harder for the sellers to realize that. So I think the agents have a very tough job, especially in as much as the market has changed in the last year, for them having to explain that especially to the sellers. Well, it's not your market right now, so you're not getting everything that you were getting 3 weeks ago or a month ago or 3 days ago. Because we all know that this can change on a dime. I mean, one day you go to bed and the next day you wake up and the market has changed and the buyers are going, no, we're not doing that anymore.
Well, and we had such a sharp shift, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it literally was, I mean, we saw this shift, what was it, third quarter 2018, market was cooking along, and then all of a sudden it turned, I think it was maybe third quarter 2018, it shifted into a buyer's market. And it took a while for the consumer to catch up, right? So realtor education to their clients is a big deal right now, especially because I think more so now than back then or any other shift, it happened so sharply.
Yes.
And so I think that they definitely have a bigger job on their hands right now. And the things that I'm hearing is that we're still going to be volatile for a while. It's flattening. It's turning into post-COVID, right? COVID's over and the greed is gone, and we're just going to get back to more of a traditional market. So I don't know that anybody needs to be scared about it, but I think that they have a big job educating their buyers and sellers right now on exactly how the contract's going to go, because I mean, consumer confidence is down with buyers. Interest rates have gone up. They're not wanting to hit the market right now. We've seen potential buyers pull back. Now we've got sellers who think that they can still sell their house for $100,000 over, and when they just like, well, actually, we need to do a price reduction. So, you know, we're going to see those contracts come and actually kind of normalize again. So I love that you said that we're starting to see the seller pay title policy again, and the buyer's agent is actually winning the where the title policy is going to go.
Right.
So that's exciting, and I know it's a big relief for some of the buyer's agents. You mentioned that you'd seen some reduced earnest money and option fees in contracts, right? So we're not seeing
you're not
$500 option fees anymore.
right. They're really back to where, you know, they should be, you know,
$100,
$200.
Okay.
You know, we're not seeing $1,000, $2,000 in option fees, you know, come through.
Yeah, I had to write $500 option fee one time for a house, and I actually had to terminate the contract, and I was like,
Yeah. We saw some
That
really
stung a little bit.
I know it did. Didn't it? Yeah, it does. I know. You're like, whoa.
You're like,
Stung
I
a little
don't-
bit.
But
Yeah.
yeah, there were some really steep option fees that were coming through for a while.
In earnest money, so we've seen that the
That's
price of
dropping
that
back down.
dropping
to-
back down.
yeah.
Okay. And then what you kind of tapped into that I want to kind of explain a little bit more thoroughly, that we're seeing terminations come back into play with buyers again. We had terminations during COVID. I mean, I
Right.
saw a record number of terminations start October 2020 is when they started for what I was seeing in my business. And so I hope we're not going to have more.
I think, if going back to COVID, because people couldn't get into the homes really, and everybody was kind of, very leery of the COVID. I've seen a lot of that change to that respect.
Okay.
That people are, we're not canceling as much. Now, I've seen an uptick in that. Because I think there's more houses on the market. There for a while, we could have 10, 15 contracts cancel in the middle of COVID. But now you may see one or two, but you're certainly not seeing the amount.
The
of
bulk.
No.
So you mentioned that appraisal waivers, you're not seeing as many appraisal waivers anymore.
No, not at all. We're
Mm-mm.
not. I mean, it's very rarely that you're seeing it, or I'm seeing that on my contracts with my agents.
Boy, I did an appraisal waiver on the Sherman property. That sucker appraised for the exact dollar amount I paid for it. And I'm like,
Yeah, because
Thank
when
God.
it doesn't,
Yeah.
oh, that's
Yeah.
And I
that
paid,
gets
I had to go into
be.
multiple offers for that one. So I was sweating it a little bit. I was
Oh,
like, thank Jesus.
absolutely.
I appreciate
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
So third-party financing addendums, you're seeing people leverage those to get out of contracts right now?
I think they have, but yes, I
Then the
think that's
HOA.
the HOA, because if you're marking, the first and the second box, you have the 3 days when you're doing the addendum. And so they're having that. So after 3 days of getting it, they choose to they're going to cancel because of the HOAs.
Mhm.
It can be any reason. It doesn't have to be a specific reason, and they don't have to give a reason. Also, with the financing, yes, you put in so many days, but then the house has to appraise.
Right.
And and that's not as bad as it used to be, because there were really no comps out there when all of this started up again and you were seeing a lot of that where people were having to bring a lot of money to closing to make up the difference.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing that a lot anymore.
So let's talk about HOA timelines. I think that's really important, because one of the things that as a common thread that I've always heard from the escrow officers is that agents aren't putting enough time for us to order their HOA docs, get them back, and it's another out for the buyer on the
Right.
contract, right?
Well, I think it's not just for us. I really think it's more for their customer,
Correct.
because it's the seller having to pay this. And yes, there is a cap on the HOA now, but there's not a cap on the rush fees, and there's not a cap on the transfer fees.
Right.
So you're putting in 5 days. Well, the difference between the contract and the HOA are different timelines. The contract goes by calendar days, but the HOA works off of working days. So if you put 10 days in the contract that the HOA documents have to be to the buyer, you've already marked out 4 days, because they're going off of Monday through Friday,
Mhm.
Monday through Friday.
So they're not counting weekends, people.
They're not
No.
counting weekends. They're not. And agents really need to be aware of that. And you put 5 days in there, well, then what I'm seeing is then customers are calling in to us as well, being upset because there's another $250 or $300 on top of the HOA capped fee, because there is no cap on the rush fee.
Yeah,
as
and
far
that's what
as-
they're having to do. If you don't put enough time in
Mhm.
that blank for us to
Mhm.
get back HOA docs, we're having to call your client and ask for rush fees.
And most HOAs take anywhere on average from, I would say, 7 to 10 days right
Mhm.
now.
Business
have-
days.
Business days.
And they have up to
Yes.
10 days.
Okay.
Business days to get those.
I've always heard you
documents.
guys say 15 to 20 days is what you need to put in that in that spot just to be safe.
And agents don't, and it's not that the title company doesn't understand why you're doing this, because we do, because of that 3 days, you're wanting to cut that timeline down as much as you can, because then once they receive those documents, they have 3 days.
3 days to do what? Explain.
3 days in which to cancel, to walk away and get your
There
earnest
you
money
go.
back.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
Right. And so the seller's agent is trying to keep that timeline as close and as tight to the chest as possible, as they say. So then the buyer doesn't have a longer period to get out of the contract. And you're already now 15, 20 days waiting on the HOA documents to get in, and then it's been off the market that long. So we understand what you're doing, but I think it's very important for the agent then to educate your customer that there's going to be more fees attached to this by us doing it this way, because you're going to have rush fees.
So what would you recommend right now in the current like, I know property management companies were really behind for a while.
Yes,
because there were so many transactions happening, right? What do you recommend right now based on how they're performing and their turnaround time that they put in the blank? Do you think 15 days?
I do. I've always thought 15 days for a very long time. 15 days has been, I think, the sweet spot. I understand you, especially because I do understand you're trying to write this contract. You're trying to beat out other offers.
Correct.
I understand all that.
But I never understood why that was a negotiating tool, because the turnaround timeline of the HOA is the turnaround timeline of the HOA.
Right.
They don't care what strategy you're trying to use to win an offer. They're still going to turn around docs whenever they're going to turn around docs.
That's right. And we have, and I know a lot of agents, especially the newer agents, think that the title company has some type of magic wand.
Yeah.
We don't.
No.
We don't have the magic wand. You're right. They're going to get those out when they get those out. And they have a specific timeline in which they can get those out. And if you want them sooner, then you're going to pay the rush fee.
And those rush fees can be, anywhere from $100 to $250
pay a rush fee
to get
before.
those.
I didn't like it.
And that's just added cost
That
on
you
the
don't
seller
need.
that they're.
Well, and look, now you can take a breath, right? The market isn't what it used to. So I think we can negotiate in some better timelines to kind of keep our sellers from having to pay exorbitant fees. Because let me tell you, some of these HOAs, you have more than one HOA, you have transfer fees, and those aren't cheap.
Those are, and that's not in that cap. That
Right.
cap for the HOA is specifically only to that resale cert.
The resale
and
cert,
that information and that document package that comes in with it has nothing to do with capping transfer fees, working capitals, any of that. And some of these HOAs go off of a percentage depending on what subdivision. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really steep.
It's a big deal.
It is. It's huge.
I don't feel sorry for you. I got a PID.
That's right.
I got to pay PID taxes.
You got to pay all that. Well, I think if the agents really want to, and I did see some agents do this. So if you're really wanting to cap that timeline of the HOAs, the 3 days, you can have your seller buy their resale certificate and order the HOA documents in advance.
So I have a lot of agents that are doing this right now, and I think it's super smart. So they get the listing, they send in they have title open the contract and pre-order the HOA docs so that they have them ready to go.
That's right.
And then when they get a buyer or a buyer's agent nipping at their heels about a property, they can keep that tight timeline, right?
That's right. Well, the minute that contract is signed and they send it to us, we turn around and send the HOA documents out that day.
Yeah, boom, done.
Now you've got 3 days. So there's one out for the buyers that you've just closed off.
Well, and they're probably under option anyway. So you're just killing two birds with one stone here.
That's
so
right.
I thought that was really smart when I started hearing about some of our clients calling in and I've got a listing, please open title and start ordering the HOA docs.
And
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's going to start becoming more and more common.
Yeah. I know we've spent a little time on this topic, but I really feel like there's a lot of confusion around HOA. What is this? What does this look like, right? And as the market shifts and the contract blanks shift, right, we need to kind of discuss and spend a little bit more time doing, a little bit of education around some of these topics. So Shannon, I was on Facebook this morning and they were talking about solar panels. I was like, it's just meant to be.
It is. Yeah, solar panels. Yeah.
Solar panels are becoming such a popular topic right now.
Yeah, they are.
And, with with inflation, it all makes sense, right? Everything's costing a lot more. I've got one client that loves his solar panels, and he loves talking about how much money he's saving.
Until he goes to sell.
Right.
But there is a complication with solar
are.
panels that a lot of people don't understand. So why don't you talk about solar panels as it pertains to the transfer of the property?
Absolutely. So you really have three options, and I'll just kind of briefly go over them. When you go to sell the property, the three options are they can stay on the house and they can get paid off at closing. The buyers can take over if they're leasing it. They can take over the lease and keep them on the house. If the buyers don't want them, then they have to come off the property.
Woo!
Think about the holes
in your
property.
roof, because they don't have to fix them when they take them off.
Ooh. I didn't know about that. I didn't even think about holes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are these liens? Are they counted as a lien on the property when they finance these things?
You can call them a lien or cloud on title,
Right.
but one way or the other,
They have to be taken care of.
Okay, so I'm not very educated on solar panels, and I'm okay with that. But our audience needs to be educated on solar panels. So when you decide to put solar panels on your house,
Mhm.
you can either outright buy the solar panels or finance the solar
Yes,
panels.
correct.
But if you choose to finance them, it becomes a lien on your house.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, so when you go to sell the property,
It's just like any other lien. It's got to be paid one way or the other.
Okay.
Something's got to happen with that lien. It
Kind
can't
of like a second lien,
Yeah.
sort of. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It can't
To think
stay
of it
on
in
there.
that respect.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't think that most people outright pay for their solar panels. That
No,
I have no idea what that costs.
they are not cheap.
They are not.
So you're seeing mostly financing, which means that
Mhm.
lien has to be taken care of. So the lien or the financing can
Mhm.
be transferred to the new buyer,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
or
And the buyer can take over that that lease per se, or the lien. They
Okay.
can take over
The
those.
financing.
Yeah, they can take over those payments on those solar panels. But if the buyers don't want the solar panels at all, then they've got to work out
Yeah.
having those removed.
That
But what a lot of
probably-
people, the ones that I have closed that I've seen, the buyers and the sellers, the buyers have still wanted them,
Yeah.
and it just gets paid off at closing.
Got it. Okay. So I think this kind of leads into some common questions that realtors need to be asking on listing appointments to avoid hiccups during the contract to close process, right? So I think, they can visibly see that there's solar panels
Right.
on the house.
Right.
And then they can ask,
Sure.
did you buy them outright or did you finance them?
Mhm.
What does this look like so that we can
Yeah.
be prepared, right, when it comes to getting the house under contract, right? Before we actually talk about the other hiccups, are there any other pieces of advice? And the answer could be no. Okay. To realtors as it pertains to solar panels on the house.
The only piece of advice I would say is just be really upfront about what that lease or financing would look like
Okay.
to the potential buyers. If it's a big payment, those buyers may not be able to, afford that payment along with their house payment. So, cost is, a factor. Just be really upfront about what the cost is, what they're saving versus what they're paying.
Well, and I would assume some of this has to be on the seller's disclosure, right? Which they're going to
Yes.
get as soon as they go into a contract and they're in their option period so they can terminate if they don't like the
Sure.
payment, right? But that's never the best idea. I mean, we want the contract to close. Okay. Thank you for that, Shannon. Janet, do you want to talk about some of the other common questions that realtors need to be asking their sellers to avoid hiccups during the closing process?
I'd love to do that.
She's excited, people.
That's one of my favorite
She's
things.
excited.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to talk about. Okay, so you have truly It's the 3 Ds, as I call them. It's divorce, death, and then debt.
Oh, debt. I have
Debt.
lien, L for lien. I like the 3 Ds better.
The 3 Ds, the debt. So when you're going in and doing a listing, it's really, and I've had agents, because I've talked about this so much in my career, is I have a lot of agents, especially newer agents, say, oh, well, we're not comfortable asking about that. Well, you're really going to be more uncomfortable.
Yes, you are.
You're going to be more uncomfortable when you have to go back to the seller and talk to them about either their divorce and their previous divorces, because there can be divorces.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be asking in that listing appointment, when you're looking at Mr. and Mrs. Seller, has anyone else lived in this property that you're not married to now? Have either one of you been married while you've lived in this property that person is deceased? The minute you hear divorce or deceased, you really want to get that open. Obviously, with lawyer's title, you want to get that open so the title plant has time to pull all of the legal documents. It takes the plant longer to pull legal documents because we have to pull them out of the courthouse.
Yep.
So it takes a little longer. So we need to get all of that information up front. We're going to need to know how long the person's been deceased. These are things the title company can ask, but the agents are needing to find out, has there been a death? Why that person has owned that property, either one. Have they been married previously? Because in the divorce, there may be where they're paying the ex-spouse off.
Yep.
And we have to have that. Well, there can be situations, could be one now, where
That was subtle.
what was that subtle? That was a little subtle, wasn't it? That was a little subtle, I know. Where now the new husband doesn't think the title company should pay the ex-spouse off.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah, it's a big rut-row. Because Mr. New Husband, you don't really have any say-so in that. This is a legal document where they divorced.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know those things up front and we get the title work open, we can start having discussions with the customers if we know in advance. Because now you've got maybe a quick close. And then all of a sudden you realize there's a deceased somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got to go back and get, death certificates. You've got to find out if there's wills. Has it been probated? Those kind of things can really hold up your closing.
Well, and if it's all cash, these people are wanting to close in 2 weeks, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah. So
So-
they wanted to close yesterday if it's
Correct.
cash.
3
Yeah,
days.
exactly.
3 days.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, we have HOA.
Yeah, no. Now you're going to wait 10 days because that's the first word out of my mouth. Is there an HOA? I don't care if it's cash or not. Is there an HOA?
Yeah. So I think you brought up a really valid point, and it happens more than you think, because we're dealing with another one where Mr. Current Husband doesn't think that the divorce payoff has to happen either, right?
Mhm.
So I think what you said, the 3 Ds, people, repeat them again. The 3 Ds. What are the 3 Ds they need to ask about in the listing appointment?
Is divorce, death, and debt.
Yep.
So you really need to ask, is there a lien on the property? Are there 2 liens on the property? A lot of times people don't understand what a lien is. Or like the solar panels, they don't think that constitutes a problem.
Or a HELOC. A HELOC. Second lien. Lien has a bad, you say lien and everything seems
Right.
like you didn't pay your bills. But it isn't necessarily tied to that. And so
Exactly.
having a more positive conversation. And look, I don't mind if we're the bad guys, right? If we have to explain to Mr. Seller that, yes, you do have to pay off the proceeds of the house to Mr.
Right, and you have, and
X.
just like you said, you have a HELOC. That's got to be closed out. I haven't done anything with the money. That's great, but it's still on the property.
Yeah.
It could be a cloud on top. So now we've got to get that paid. We got to get a release of lien, even though there's a zero balance. It still has to be released.
So, look, I think the moral of the story here, the big takeaway from here is just, I know that there's probably some agents that aren't comfortable asking these questions, but this is a transaction, right? A financial transaction.
That's right.
And so when you start to look at things that way, making sure that you have your ducks in a row with your seller before you go under contract is kind of a big deal, because these things could legitimately delay closing.
Well, I think when they do, I think they need to think like exactly what you just said. This is a business transaction. And I think what they need to understand is they're preparing their customer the best way they can. So there's fewer hiccups and fewer surprises that are going to happen in the transaction.
Yeah.
So they're having conversations or giving us the opportunity to have those conversations, but we need to know them as soon as possible.
I agree. And I hear from my escrow teams all the time that they didn't tell us that they were getting a divorce.
Yes.
No, or
Yeah.
or married,
Yeah.
or married.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's another big thing. And I honestly, I've had it happen to me. And she came into closing and she had a wedding ring on. And I'm sorry, you really need to understand what closers are looking at and what we're thinking. We're sitting there smiling and explaining papers, but I promise our heads are like 12 hamsters in there going full speed, because we're going in all kinds of different directions. And one of the things I'm looking at is a wedding band.
Yeah.
And I'm looking down going, single woman.
Yeah.
You know, well, here we go, because I have to ask that question. They married 2 days before. Well, she didn't think it was a big deal that she needed to tell her agent or the title company.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah. And I mean, and I'm having to hunt her new husband up to come in and sign documents.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, community property is a real thing here.
It
so
is.
Yes,
we have to
it is.
address it, and we have to make sure that everybody's on board and signing what they're supposed to be signing, and that people say that they actually are who they say they are. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've had ghost buyers where people are go under contract and they're not a real buyer, you know?
Right.
So
yes.
us being thorough, I feel like the best way to explain it to agents is, look, we are being very thorough. We have to be thorough to protect everyone in the transaction. Because God forbid we sell a house to a person that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? And so it's just, we've got to be thorough to protect everyone in the transaction, including the realtors. So, okay. So this one keeps coming up. I keep getting this one personally, so I wanted to bring it up. Okay. So contract gets executed late Friday night. It's a holiday weekend. Clients want to turn in earnest and option. And so that has happened. I have gotten those texts a couple of times, and you know, look, we want to help people and work through things as much as we can. But you know, I feel like our hands are really tied when it comes to this. So I wanted Janet or Shannon, whoever wants to take it. I've got Janet on this one to discuss the best practice here.
Go ahead.
Shannon.
So if you execute a contract and it's a Friday, really the best thing that you can do is turn it in, get it to the title company the next day that the title company is open. So if we're open on that Monday, assuming it's not a holiday, to bring that in and give it to us on Monday, wire it to us, mobile deposit, whichever, you know, option you choose to do on the next business day that we are there.
The only thing that won't be an option, like say Monday was a holiday, right? Then it's due on
Then
Tuesday
it's due on
because
that
it's calendar
Tuesday.
days,
Yes.
not business days. So the only thing that really wouldn't be an option would be the FedEx overnight label, right? So, but even if we were able to take that earnest and option money check, we can't do anything with it because the banks, we're closed because the banks are closed, right?
Yes. And
So
you are correct. There is nothing that we can do with that money. We cannot deposit it. We cannot do anything if the banks are not open.
So wiring doesn't help.
No.
We can't send out the mobile deposit option because the banks are closed. And so, and we have to have, and look, here's the thing that I kind of saw as a problem. You correct me if I'm wrong. If you try to do these things ahead of time, it may not, we don't have an order number. We don't have an open title order on this.
We have to get that contract open and have that information in order for us to receipt that money in and to be able to send those receipted pages out.
And we need to securely receive the money and make sure it goes where it's supposed to go.
Absolutely.
Into that
Specific
open
account.
Yes.
Yes.
So, you know, just a little heads up, education, you know, whenever it comes to a holiday weekend, there's just nothing.
There's just really not.
There's nothing.
Right, we can do. The banks are not open.
There's nothing.
And really, yeah, the best
So
thing
it
to
is
do.
Tuesday.
It's going to be Tuesday.
Yeah.
Whatever day, the next working day that the title company is open, we're all for getting and accepting that earnest and option money from you.
And I'm like, what can I do? What can I do? And listen, you can't do anything.
Right.
So it's okay to say we can't do anything and we need to wait until Tuesday. That's just the best practice to keep the money secure,
Yes.
in my mind.
Yes.
And I think that's what we need to emphasize is we want to keep money secure.
Oh, absolutely. No one wants their money floating around somewhere.
So before we wrap up, I want to spend a little time on my favorite topic right now, which is client service. Well, it's not right now, it's always, but during COVID, we just didn't really have an opportunity to service clients like we like to, right? I think I talked to you guys about this last night. The worst closing experience in my mind is the parking lot closing. You're in your car and the wind's blowing and you're trying to keep your skirt down and, you got all these papers to sign and it's 100 degrees outside and you're sweating. This is a terrible experience, experience. And so we didn't have anything in the office. We were using mobile closers. We weren't able to interface with our clients. And, I saw one this week I haven't seen in probably a year because COVID, and one of them contracted COVID really bad and they were in the hospital and all the things. And so I loved the fact that I finally got to see them again. And so we're all already back into client service, right? And in my mind, you two really lead the way in client service. And that's part of the reason I've wanted to align myself with you two is it's really important that the sales rep and the escrow team see eye to eye on these things so that we can keep our clients and we keep them happy, right? So do you guys want to talk about your philosophy on how you treat your clients, what client service means to you before we wrap up today?
Yeah. I think Shannon does some things different, obviously, than I do, but I think, in my opinion, in the years that I've done this, I love sitting down at the closing table and talking and meeting with the customers. There is so much information that I'm giving you at a closing table that you're not getting from a mobile notary. COVID is where we can close in the office. To me, almost, unless they're at a distance of where, they're in another state or they're, in Waxahachie or somewhere like that it's not feasible for them to come to the office. I think they're missing out on a lot. From the minute we open that contract, me personally, I always am watching my emails. So when I see that contract come in, I immediately respond to everyone to let them know, yes, we do have the contract. Yeah. I've seen it. And then I also tell them Leah's going to be reaching out, or one of my assistants will be reaching out first thing in the morning to get everything set up to put the contract in so we can start moving forward and gathering the information as well as letting you know and getting your information. I think it's a circle to me. And so when the agents bring a customer, whether you're my agent that I work with all the time or not, their perception of when they walk out the door and everything that's happened to them from the minute we've made contact with them to the minute they walk out the door and taking pictures, they need to really think this was the greatest experience they've ever had, because they're going to then turn around and they're going to be more excited about giving that agent more business and referring more business to that agent. If you're having a really bad closing, that's going to leave a bad taste in their mouth.
Oh, yes.
It really
Not
does.
good.
And it doesn't, and the agent is, they're being hung at that point as well. So it's very important. We do champagne closings.
I love champagne closings.
We do
who
champagne
doesn't love
closings with mimosas, or we do it with the cranberry juice and everything. It's just so much fun. We have specialized cookies. They're our brand cookies. They're really very good. I have to stay away from them. I really do.
They actually are good.
They
They're
are good,
amazing.
because I would just stand there and eat them. So we do that. We we decorate. I love decorating. So the office is always decorated. It's really a homey, yet it's a very comfortable atmosphere, I think. And we worked really hard to achieve that.
Oh, and you guys are going to want to come see it at Christmas because they do it up. They do it up.
We do love to do it, but I kind of lovingly refer to it as family professional.
Oh, that's a good term for your office. Yes, for the office. I agree.
Yeah.
Family professional. It's a very warm and comfortable place to come, but it's still professional.
Yes.
So I agree.
But
Well-
I think closings should be a celebration. You know,
Most of the
it's-
time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're
Yes.
not.
I mean, buyers are so excited, you know, to come in. Sellers are excited to sell and move on to that next chapter of their life. And it should be a celebration, you know, of all of the hard work that everyone has done to get to that closing table.
Well, and it's also an opportunity for you guys to tee up asking for our client, the realtor, to be able to ask for a referral, right? So I love the fact that you spend time talking about how great the realtor is.
Absolutely.
That to me is very
that's a
important.
big
I always
deal.
do it too when I'm in a closing.
That's a big deal.
They have
I
a
mean,
hard
to me
job.
it is.
yeah.
Look how hard they've worked. I mean, I try to, anytime I am working with new assistants or anything like that, I always try to explain to them, this is the agent's, this is their check. This is what they worked for. And they could have been working on these buyers or sellers for 6-8 months. So it needs to be excitement. There's also, yes, and you're saying most times, you're going to have the divorce, you're
Sure.
going to have the deaths, you're going to have mom's got to move out of her home
Yes.
that she's been in for 60 years. But there's still a way to handle it professionally, yet understanding, and them leave with still, okay, this is over. So the best feeling that they can possibly leave with, you have to work through that process from the time you sit down
I love
at
that
the
you said that.
closing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, our realtor clients really appreciate things like that. And we didn't get to do it for so long. And so now that things have normalized as far as COVID is concerned, you know, we're not really worried about that as much anymore. And we can get back to really great client service. I think that you two are a really bright light when it comes to client service. And so I think
you.
any realtor that comes to our office at Preston Plano is going to really enjoy the experience. So I want to end on that high note. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me today. I always good to see your faces, and I love the fact that we are working to partner again. So
I am too. Thank you.
of
Thank you so
course,
much.
Love
thank
working
you.
with you.
Yeah,
You're fabulous.
absolutely. So we're wrapping up another episode. Thank you again for joining me today. If you like my content, you're really going to love my escrow team. And so give us an opportunity to earn your business. Reach out to me on any of my social media platforms and make it a great day.